D. Mace, Finnegan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, and David Janes here with you on a sweltering Monday in our fair city.
I love it.
It was a rough weekend for our rooting interests in college baseball. Willie Donick up in Ohio, where unfortunately Mahoney Donick and the Denison Big Red eliminated from the D3 College World Series. And of course, and we're going to spend a lot of time talking about Vanderbilt making the wrong kind of history this weekend at Hawkins Field, eliminated as the number one overall seed in the NCAA Baseball Tournament after losing to Wright State on Sunday. So with that uplifting introduction, how is everybody doing today?
Well, I mean, that was, that whole series was, man, it was up and down for Vandy, more down than anything. But besides that, the weekend was good. Got an opportunity to see a good friend of mine, my old college roommate, my brother. So I got a chance to spend time with him. He's here for PAC, which is Pro Athletes Community. They're doing a lot of great things for athletes that are transitioning into the real world. So I was able to be a part of that this weekend, and I got another function I got to go to tonight. But that's been my weekend, man. Getting excited for a minute at Vandy when they kind of made it seem like it was going to be the game. It should have been 5-5. I hate that rule, but so be it. They end up losing 5-4. They mounted a comeback.
Willie, how are you doing? A double whammy for the Donicks this weekend.
It was it's all about perspective, guys. I'm sitting here at Nationwide Arena in the press box. I want to just give a shout out to Marty Mulford and the Columbus Blue Jackets for accommodating me today, because when you're in a double elimination tournament, your whole life is in flux. You don't know when your team is going to be out. You can't assume that they're going to keep winning. You hope that they don't lose, but all of a sudden Denison's magical run to the College World Series on the Division III level was done in a day. They won their first game, but they were swept yesterday. It ended up after midnight Eastern time. So I had to find a place to do the show today on my way home, because I got to take my college freshman, who's now no longer a freshman. He'll be a sophomore. He's a rising sophomore. Got to get him back to Nashville. So there was a lot in flux. So Denison's tournament was in the World Series, mirrored Vanderbilt's run in the regionals. Win the first game, feel good about where you're going, team's looking good, and then just like that, as we talked about last week, baseball can strike, and you just never know how it's going to go. There is a randomness. It's hard to just, for the better team, to overpower the opposition if the other team comes up big. But I know there's a ton of disappointment on West End today, just like there will be in the town of Granville, right down the street here from Columbus, Ohio.
You've probably heard this by now, but with Vanderbilt being eliminated in its own regional, the Commodores are the first number one national seed to fail to reach its regional final since the tournament went to its current format in 1999. It started off, I guess you could say promising, but really Vanderbilt averted disaster on Friday. The Commodores defeated Wright State 4-3. Riley Nelson hit a home run that was initially ruled a foul ball. It was overturned. Wright State reviewed it. The review was upheld, and Vanderbilt survives and advances on Friday. But the Commodores lose 3-2 to Louisville on Saturday and 5-4 to Wright State on Sunday. And as Derek mentioned, Vanderbilt down 5-1 in the top of the ninth. They cut the lead to 5-4 on a Rustin Rigdon ground rule double. And because of that, Mike Mancini had to stay at third. If that ball stays in the park, Mancini scores. It's a tie game in the ninth inning. But because it hopped over the fence, Mancini has to stay on third. And then R.J. Austin flied out to end the game as Vanderbilt makes unfortunate history in the NCAA Baseball Tournament. Let's hear Tim Corbin, of course, Vanderbilt's head coach. This was his analysis of his team's loss after the game.
No, the game usually works its way out. You could see that we kind of ran out of time. We were getting to that point where we were on the edge. We got in that dugout, and the players were communicating, we're going to roll this ninth. We're going to roll the ninth. And you could feel the momentum shift. But, we just ran out of time. But no, you can't. I mean, it's going to happen organically. The kids are trying to get themselves going. They're trying to stay very positive, which they were. But I think when you've got a group of guys that, and this isn't the case with every team, but when you have kids that really, really care about each other, then that too can play into trying to finish something because everyone wants it for one another. And when you want it for one another and it doesn't work out, sometimes you're trying harder. And I could feel that. And there's no magic words, magic dust for that moment, but you could sense that these kids really, really wanted this for each other. And sometimes when that happens, it's squeezing the bird too hard.
So that was Tim Corbin after the game. And Willie, we spent so much time in the latter half of Vanderbilt's season talking about the offensive surge that the Commodores had, but a complete power outage in these 3 games. They hit 132 in the regional, 2 for 17 with runners in scoring position, 0 for 9 against Louisville, 2 for 8 against Wright State on Sunday in the second of the 2 matchups against Wright State. So when you analyze what went wrong for Vanderbilt, how did a team that was hitting the ball so well on its way to winning the SEC tournament, how did that completely unravel in 3 days on West End?
I think in a simple word, it's baseball. But to break it down piece by piece, number one, you have to look. I think too often we don't credit the other teams. That I think Wright State and Louisville deserve credit for stepping up and playing their best, giving themselves a chance by getting some great individual pitching performances. And that said, I think you heard it in Tim Corbin's voice. He felt like his team started trying a little too hard. It wasn't coming easy. And I think when you're the favorite, and I think we said all year long, this was not a team that was loaded with future first-round picks. History could prove me wrong, but I think this was a team that probably overachieved and made a pretty remarkable run to get the number 1 seed. And they kind of reverted back a little bit more to what you can be. It's just hard to stay hot for 6 straight weeks, especially if you don't have this incredible talent. And so I don't want to be making excuses for them at all, because they were a team that should win that regional. They should have won it, and they didn't. And it's crushing for sure. But I've seen it happen before, right? You come back to earth. You've had these miraculous wins where you're hitting walk-off homers. You're making these huge comebacks. Everybody's rolling. You roll through Hoover, the best league in the world in college baseball. They rolled through there and swept for an SEC championship. I've seen it happen. When the President's Trophy team loses in the hockey playoffs in the first round, it happens on occasion. There's a randomness. You lose it. You start trying too hard, and the underdog wins. So it was tough to watch, but it is something that we see in sports sometimes.
Yeah, it does happen. I mean, listen, I think ultimately the team that showed up in the college playoffs, the College World Series playoffs, I think was probably closer to the team that we saw throughout the season. I think they went on a hot streak entering into the SEC championship, SEC playoffs, and everybody considers the SEC the top conference in baseball. And it seemed like they dominated on their way, to winning the SEC championship. So their bats got hot at the wrong time, but then they cooled off at the wrong time. They became more of who they are. And I'm not sure that this team was truly equipped. I know what they did the night previous, coming back and hitting home run. I get that. But I don't think this team, realistically, if you just look at it, they probably were not a team that could, come back from a deficit that they were in, because their bats, they just wasn't batting well. No one was hitting the ball. They had 3 hits the whole game. They left runners in scoring position. You just don't do that by accident. I think they came back down to more so of who they are. I think they're still better than what they showed the other night, but I think they're closer to that than what we saw when they ran through the SEC championship.
As Joe Rexroad notes in his column on The Athletic, Vanderbilt led for just 1 of the 27 innings it played. And again, the Commodores hit 132 in the regional, 2 for 17 with runners in scoring position. We did talk about the quote unquote curse of the number 1 overall seed in the College World Series tournament. So again, only 2 number 1 overall seeds have won the College World Series, Miami in 1999 and Tennessee in 2024. By the way, Willie, the SEC, 13 teams into the tournament field, 7 have already been eliminated, including 3 hosts: Vanderbilt, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi State, Florida, and Kentucky. And Tennessee could join that group. A do or die game today in Knoxville, Tennessee versus Wake Forest. But the SEC,
I believe LSU is as well. Am I right about that? LSU.
Yes,
got to win
LSU plays Little Rock.
Okay, so now it's 8. 8 teams have been eliminated.
No,
LSU plays tonight against Little
sorry.
Rock.
Okay,
Yeah.
So it could be 9. There you go. It
could
be 9.
Be as many as 9, which would be a shock. It really would. Yeah. So Vanderbilt is now 0-2 as the number 1 overall seed. It's so crazy. All the success they've had going back all these years with Tim Corbin, and the teams that have earned the highest seed have not done well. But I have experienced, and I don't know if D-Mace, you've ever been on a team like that, where, because there's not a series in football, but I think about some playoff games that you played at that when everybody, you've had such great mojo for a long time, and then suddenly you don't have it. It's like a superhero that loses the powers,
and you're trying to find it.
And you're looking around. You're like, how do I get? Wait! I have these magic. Where are they? And everybody's looking around, going, what's wrong? What's wrong? There's a weight that comes in, especially for something as delicate as hitting. And it's hard to explain. Again, I'm not making excuses for them at all. They didn't get it done. But at the same time, this is sports, right? It does happen. We can cite other things. The Titans in that playoff game against the Bengals, they played a terrible game at the worst possible time. That would be an example. The President's Trophy winning Predators in 2018. Game 7, their future Hall of Fame goalie, the guy that's got the statue, gives up 2 goals early in the game. It's just really weird how in sports sometimes bad things happen at the worst possible time and suddenly derail a ride that has been going super, super well and exciting. You have all these great moments, and suddenly, it's like you come up empty so fast.
Is this what do you think this was because if you look at it, listen, they got the number 1 overall seed, meaning Vandy, because of what they did in the best conference in baseball, college baseball. But do you think that just maybe the opponent was the wrong opponent for Vandy? Because the guy that Wright State throwing him on the other day, he was giving up 8 runs and they still couldn't amount anything against a guy that they
should. I said
like you should have dominated him.
Yes, on paper that pitching staff should not have 2 games, where they shut down Vanderbilt's offense. It should not happen. Louisville is a program that's been really good for a long time, and so them stepping up and having the talent, the recruiting base that they're working off of, that I can see. But it's just it does make me think it just became kind of mental. And I wasn't at the games, but you could sense it when you were watching it, right? It just shouldn't it shouldn't happen that way, but it's how big upsets happen. You start looking around going, why isn't this happening easy? Let's try harder. And it's not like they don't care, but sometimes, like you heard Tim Corbin, when you're trying too hard, you get intense, and it's just not it doesn't happen for you. It becomes you do worse than you should.
615-737-1025. Vanderbilt eliminated from the NCAA Baseball Tournament, becoming the first #1 national seed to fail to reach its regional final since the tournament went to its current format in 1999. We'll take your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com at 615-737-1025. Willie mentioned the mental side of things. Tim Corbin had a quote after the game that I found to be interesting that I would like to discuss, but also the Commodores' failure in the Nashville Regional will lead to a certain conversation about Tim Corbin, I'm sure, and we will touch on that next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingad, 1025-1063. The Game.
For us, it was tough. It was hard. Offense it was just hard to come by. It felt tough. It felt heavy. The guys were trying. I feel like I didn't equip them properly in some way. Having done this a lot of times, I just feel like I didn't equip them for this moment. but they were trying, and we could feel like we were going to pull it out. Mike had another big hit. He's been so clutch to us throughout the year, but certainly down the stretch. He's a good leader. He's tough. And the kids play tough. It's unfortunate to get to this point. It really, really stings for the kids, and I hate it for them. I hate it for them. I do. You work so hard to get yourself in a position where you can win, and when it ends, it's always the same. It's just a terrible feeling. It's an empty gut, and I feel bad for the kids.
That was Tim Corbin yesterday after Vanderbilt was eliminated from its own regional, losing 5-4 to Wright State. I do want to get to that quote because I did find it to be incredibly fascinating. But first, let's go to Eric on our phone line, driven by Wilson County, Hyundai.com. Eric, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, guys, I've got no dog in this hunt when it comes to, like, the college baseball scene or anything like that. And I've heard, I don't think it's a lot of I mean, I don't know, because I haven't really heard, don't pay much attention to social media. I've heard some rumblings of the thing. Maybe it's time for Tim Corbin to go, which I don't buy. I think he should be there as long as he wants to be there. But one of the things I heard on another station, somebody made this point, and I don't know if you guys agree with me or not, is that they think that, of course, it's the whole NIL and transfer portal, where Vanderbilt, of course, in football with the whole Diego Pavia thing benefited from that. And they were able to get some transfers, recruits in and stuff and the like. But they think that's kind of biting them in the butt, like kind of comparing to, like, with Alabama football and all that stuff. I don't know if you guys think that has anything to do with it or not. But of course, it's going to be harder for Vanderbilt to get the type of players that they need with the NIL transfer portal. I think certainly they've done a good job recruiting, and I've heard that they've got a top 5 class and everything. And I'm not going to say I would never count them out with Tim Corbin and the type of program he's built up. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. Do you think that has anything to do with that, or do you think that could be overblown, or just what your general thoughts are on that? Guys, it's always a good talk to you guys. Y'all take care, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for the call, Eric. Willie, why don't you answer that question?
I think we did a pretty good job last week, in the last couple of weeks, really, as we started focusing more on their run that got them into this position where they could host as the number 1 overall seed. The adjustments and the adaptations that Tim Corbin has made in the new world of college athletics with the NIL and transfers. We talked to Tim Corbin directly about the fact that he still believes and values high school recruits developed into young men and great baseball players. Eric mentioned the top 5 recruiting class. He's gonna get the top recruits. He's continuing to get the top recruits out of high school. But now it's about not only that, but you got to blend it with some the right transfers, etc. Right. But I think he's doing that. I feel very good about where it's going. I'm very encouraged about where it's going to go from here. I think the adjustments have been made to the formula, and it's been an incredibly successful formula. This quote unquote down cycle, if you want to call it that, for Vanderbilt baseball includes 2 SEC tournament championships in the last 3 years, 2 hosting of the regionals in the last 3 years. It just hasn't happened in the postseason. The last 3 postseasons, they haven't come through for whatever reason. And other than that, I think the program is fine. Any issues with Tim Corbin, I think, are just way, way overblown and people grasping at trust. It's just frustrating when you see a team struggle to hit like that, right? They had, like yesterday, they had base runners. They only had 1 hit through 8 innings, but they had guys on base. And even the key game was really the Louisville game. If they find a way to win that game, they're going to win that regional. But they lost the critical game where they were down 3-2 with 2nd and 3rd. I think nobody out in the 6th or the 7th inning, and they don't score. 1 big hit there, and they're probably okay. But that's the razor's edge we're talking about. But big picture, I'm very encouraged of where it's going.
One texter says, 6th inning in the Louisville game was when the weekend was lost. Bunt Vastine,
they
get the tying run home, and it may be another story. Him and RJ Ofer with 7 Ks, not good. But piggybacking off of what you were talking about, Willie, you're right about the fact that the Commodores have won the SEC tournament 2 of the past 3 years. But since Vanderbilt came within 1 win of the national title in 2021, the Commodores have failed to reach the second weekend of the tournament 4 years in a row. I can't imagine that's ever happened, or has rarely happened, under Tim Corbin's watch. And I do think that because of that, there are going to be people who don't watch Vanderbilt baseball every day and wonder what people were wondering last year. Has Tim Corbin lost his fastball, so to speak? But I do want to touch on that comment he made that we came back on from the break. Derek, Tim Corbin saying that he feels like he didn't equip his team properly for that moment. And I found that to be interesting, just because Tim Corbin has been in this position every year for the past 2 decades. So, as you said to me before we went on the air, there's only so much a coach can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Tim Corbin can't pinch hit for his players who can't hit in these games. But I found it fascinating to hear a veteran coach say that he felt like he didn't equip his team properly for this moment.
See, that's the difference between, to me, not only great coaches, but coaches that understands the moment. Last week we were talking about, who was it, Toronto Maple Leafs coach?
We were talking about the Dallas Stars coach.
Yes.
Yeah.
And his remarks he made after, his loss.
Right, after the Stars were eliminated by the Oilers.
Absolutely. So you saw his remarks. And then a few weeks later, or a week later, you see a contrast, the opposite of what was done in Dallas. You saw the opposite from a head coach, a veteran guy that is very disappointed in his team, but he understands the moment. It doesn't make it any better if you go after individuals or if you go after a certain position. What you do is, and what Corbin did, and I'm trying to figure out, and I need, I'm gonna ask you, Willie. He's trying to take on the brunt of the loss. And when I listen to him, I'm like, I understand what you're saying, Coach. You are A1. You take full responsibility. Yeah, your players need to do what they need to do, but you felt that you just didn't equip them well enough. But when I look at it, how much more can he equip them? He's not. They had men on base in scoring position. It's not, Corbin can't go out there. He can give them strategy, what pitches to look for, but he can't go out there and actually make them swing the bat. I understand where Corbin came from, but Willie, you've been in that world. Like, what is he actually referring to? Is it something technical?
I think you hit on it 100%. I think he's a guy that just would want to do anything for his players, but it's a little bit of a helpless feeling. But he's putting it on himself. He's making himself accountable, and because I just think he feels awful. You hate it when you build every day. People have made jokes about Brian Callahan and the team building stuff that he's doing. Oh, it's romper room or whatever stuff that people want to pick at. But really, that's what a coach's job is. You build an environment. You build a culture. You build for months towards the big moments so that your team can come through in those moments. And so as a coach, when you've had all this table setting and you're hopefully going to reap the rewards and you fail, you feel like you failed as the coach. That's just what a good coach does, right? But it's not magic. It's like you said, D-Mace, you can't go up to the plate and magically make it happen. You can put everybody in the right position, but ultimately they got to get it done. And the other team is trying really hard too. The other team has been building for 6 months. Wright State's been sitting there going, "Hey, this is our shot. We're going to pull the biggest upset in the country." That's the essence of sports, and it stinks when your team doesn't do it. And that's what you're hearing in Tim Corbin's voice. He hates to lose. I mean, hates more than I think anybody that I know.
He is the definition of someone who hates to lose more than they like to win.
Yeah.
I've heard that. That thing one or two minutes.
I think that's when they lose, he puts it on himself. When they win, I think he is great about giving the credit to his players. I think that's what a great coach, and he's not the only guy, but he's an example of what I think truly great coaches feel.
So, Willie, let's talk about these past 4 tournaments. And of course, we want to stress that every team is different. I heard Robbie Stanley mention this morning, and I agree. During the Eastern Conference Final of the Stanley Cup playoffs, the Carolina Hurricanes were down 3-0 in that series to the Panthers, and they were on the verge of being swept out of the Eastern Conference Final for the 4th time in a row. They were swept in like 2009 and like 2000, I don't remember what year, 2019. And Robbie was like, and I agree with him, it's weird to ask players who are on this team about a sweep that happened in 2009. None of them were there.
Right.
None of them were there for that. So I understand that every team that Vanderbilt has had over the past 4 years is different in some way or another. But at the end of the day, Vanderbilt has failed to reach the second weekend of the tournament 4 years in a row. Willie, as the person that I know who watches this program closer than anybody else, have you noticed any common themes or threads about why Vanderbilt has been unable to get out of the regional over these past 4 years?
I think part of it is what we've been talking about. It's hard to explain. Just like all those great for those who are from this area and watched the Braves for all those years in the 90s, in the 2000s, for over a decade. They were in there every year, but only won the whole thing one time. There were so many seasons where you're sitting there going, how, with Greg Maddux, Tom Glavine, and John Smoltz and Chipper Jones, how did they not win it more than that? Because they were in it every year. And I think sometimes when you're in it every year, you take for granted how hard it is to be there every year. But I will say this. I think, and we documented this is not me just saying this now, right? I've been saying this the last couple of years. When the NIL shift happened, the transfer NIL shift happened suddenly, Vanderbilt as a school was slow to react. And I think Tim Corbin really didn't dive in like other teams. And I think that it did take its toll a little bit on the overall collective talent level. But I think it's rebounding. I think he's got his formula the way he wants to go at it. And I think if he can hold on to the top end recruits and not lose them to NIL elsewhere, and I think that's where Vanderbilt is come now. I think they've got enough resources to where they can keep the guys they want to keep. They can pay them enough in the NIL. You know, that I think they will rebound and get that high end team. Because if you look at the teams that have won it for him, right? They've had the top end guys: Austin Martin, J.J. Blade, Kumar Rocker, Jack Leiter. That's the recent group. Then you can go back to David Price and all these other guys, right? Guys who are high first round picks who are playing in the big leagues today, right? I think they're moving back in the direction where they're going to have a couple of those dudes, right, that can pick everybody up and be the difference.
615-737-1025. We will take your thoughts on Vanderbilt's unprecedented loss in the NCAA Baseball Tournament, the first number 1 national seed to fail to reach its regional final since the tournament went to its current format in 1999. And Tennessee fans could get the last laugh depending on what happens today in Knoxville. Tennessee takes on Wake Forest in an elimination game in the Knoxville Regional. That game is at 5 o'clock. We'll see if the Volunteers can advance to the Super Regional. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, there is a position on the Tennessee Titans that I think a lot of fans would like for them to upgrade. And there was a report over the weekend about an intriguing name who could, I stress, could be available. We'll discuss that next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingham, 1025-1063. The Game.
Here we go with Kyle Pitts. What do you know about him?
So
Is he on
a
the
little
move?
trade buzz on that right now. I checked with a source who said that if the Falcons can get a really good offer for Kyle Pitts, that he very well could be moved. So it's not a situation where they're aggressively shopping him, but they certainly appear open. That's the feeling around the league, that they'd be open to moving him at the right offer. And so from Pitts' perspective, he does love Atlanta. He's not requesting a trade or anything, but my sense is he would at least be open to a new offense somewhere else, because right now he's probably the third or fourth option in Atlanta. Somewhere else he could be more prominently featured perhaps.
That was Jeremy Fowler on ESPN over the weekend talking about Atlanta Falcons tight end Kyle Pitts. Jordan Schultz reported over the weekend as well that multiple teams have reached out to the Atlanta Falcons about the availability of Pitts. From Schultz, quote, "Nothing is imminent, and Atlanta would prefer to keep him, but I'm told it would take at least a day 2 pick to even spark serious talks." And Titans fans, I think they're over Chigakonkwo as the team's starting tight end, to say the
Pretty
least.
much so.
So
I know one person that seems to be over him.
yes, but I don't think he's alone. So I was thinking about Kyle Pitts, number 4 overall pick 4 years ago in 2021, had an outstanding rookie season, 68 catches, 1,026 yards as a rookie in 2021. He was the first rookie tight end to be named to the Pro Bowl in nearly 20 years, since Jeremy Shockey in 2002. But since then, though, he has struggled with injuries and inconsistency. In the 3 years since, he has 1,625 total receiving yards, which averages out to 628 yards per 17 games. And he's been phased out of the Falcons offense. In 2022, Kyle Pitts had a target share of 30.7%. Last season, that plummeted to 17% behind Drake London, Darnell Mooney, and Bijan Robinson. So, Derek, as you explained to me, the coaching change had a lot to do with that, because who was the Falcons coach before Raheem Morris?
It was Arthur Smith.
It was Arthur Smith, and we know Arthur Smith likes him some tight ends.
Exactly.
Yes, he does.
So Raheem Morris comes in. He brings in an offensive coordinator from the LA Rams, who, Derek, you told me, do not feature the tight end prominently. So it had me wondering, if the Titans are looking for an upgraded tight end, if they are looking for a young tight end who can grow with the team, Kyle Pitts is 24. He'll turn 25 in early October. I'm wondering, Derek, if the Titans should take a run at Kyle Pitts. What do you think about that?
I think they should. Now, what are, you said a second day pick, second round pick.
As reported by Jordan Schultz.
Are the Titans willing to give up a second round pick for a ascending player? I know the stats doesn't look like he's an ascending player, but they phased him out of that offense very quickly. When he was used properly, he was one of the up and coming young tight ends in the National Football League. And you just don't take that step back that far without there being other factors involved. And I just think they started to phase him out once Arthur left. They started to phase him out last season. So I think that would be something that the Titans should explore, because listen, frankly, over the last 3 seasons, Chigakonkwo, he's averaged about 470 something yards, about maybe 40 receptions and 2 or 3 touchdowns. I'm not sure if that's enough for this, for a young quarterback. I think they need someone more dynamic and more explosive. I love Chig, but I'm not sure if Chig is a dynamic starter. I think he's a starter in this league, he can play, but I don't think he moves the needle much when teams are game planning. Yes, they pay attention to him, but if you have a Kyle Pitts there, now he becomes the number 1 option. Now defense has got to, because with Kyle Pitts, he's big enough to put him in a slot, strong enough to put him outside, to overmatch some of these DBs. So he's sort of that tight end that everybody's looking for, that can flex from putting his hands in the dirt and then also being out wide by himself.
Listed at 6'6", 246 pounds.
Excellent red zone. He would be a red zone nightmare if they used him the right way.
Willie, your thoughts on Kyle Pitts?
You know, I hear D Mace talking about it, and I'm like everybody else. When you watch Kyle Pitts, going back to his days at Florida, you're just drooling over the talent. You're like, my goodness, look at this guy. He's the perfect prototypical tight end who can move, he can catch. And then you look at the production, like D-Mace just said, should be a great red zone option target. He's got 10 touchdowns in 4 years. And I think there's probably some fantasy owner of Kyle Pitts shaking his head in his car right now, driving along going, yeah, Kyle Pitts, I fell for it too. You know, like and some of this was under Arthur Smith, right? That first year, he did meet expectations. He had 1,000 yards. He averaged 15 yards a catch, which is really good for a tight end. He made the Pro Bowl. And then the next 2 years, you're like, what happened? Well, part of it is injuries. And then last year, under the new coach, new regime, and also let's remember who was throwing him the ball for a couple of those years, right?
Yes.
It wasn't Steve Bartkowski or anything, you know, not that Steve Bartkowski's a Hall of Famer, but give me your best Falcons quarterbacks through the years.
Here were his quarterbacks. Here were Kyle Pitts' quarterbacks since arriving in Atlanta. He had Matt Ryan in Matt Ryan's final season with the Falcons. He had the combination of, wait for it, guys, Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder in 2022. If you think that's bad, wait till you hear about 2023 when he had Desmond Ridder and Taylor Heineke.
Yeah.
And then last year, Kirk Cousins and Michael Penix Jr. And as one texter points out, and the texter is correct, I will never understand how all of these Titans fans want to keep getting people that are hurt or have injury problems. They'd never work out. They're already hurt. If he has injury problems, we do not need Kyle Pitts. And yes, Kyle Pitts does have an injury history. Dustin in Hopkinsville says, I'm over Chig, but it might be Callahan. All players seem to regress under Callahan, but get a good proven tight end and build our rookie behind him. Another texter said, give Chig some grace. He had to turn into a blocking tight end for Henry and then had to deal with Will Levis. I agree on the injury part. Titans fans, they've been burned by that before. The thing about Kyle Pitts versus Jonnu Smith, because there were reports last week that Jonnu Smith might be on the move, and I'm sure Titans fans, some Titans fans at least, would love to have Jonnu Smith back in the fold. But Jonnu Smith is a quote-unquote older player at this point. Kyle Pitts, again, he'll be 20.
Okay,
25. He's played 4 full seasons.
Exactly. That's why
he hasn't turned 25 yet. And he's only had 1 year where he's missed games.
Exactly.
So,
he's not injury prone. What are people talking about?
Yeah, he has. You know, he's had some injuries, but I think if you play 4 years in the league,
you're going to have injuries.
You're going to have some injuries. Like nobody's shielded.
Yes, as Caleb said, he's only not played 17 games once. Is that considered an injury problem?
It's not an injury problem.
That's a fair retort, Caleb.
Yes. And so this is what I would say, though. There's no way I'm giving up a second-round pick. Forget that.
Now you got to pay him, too.
Yes, he does not have a contract for next season.
If he hits the market, then I'm in. But I'm not going to pay him big and give a second-round pick because I'm not going to fall for the tantalizing talent. The fact is, he just has not produced for 3 straight years. He's not productive enough for me to have to give up a second-round pick. But I'm very intrigued about the whole thing if he gets on the street.
But do you think that was more so? I think it was more so the product of his environment. Because when you go through 3 or 4 quarterbacks, and you're talking about 3 or 4 quarterbacks,
and not good ones.
Exactly. We're not going through 3 top end quarterbacks. No, we're going through 3 bottom end quarterbacks, and the production you saw just gradually decrease in those situations. And when he did have a sort of stable guy last season, at one point it seems like they were getting back on track somewhat, but then again, he had to deal with going from one quarterback to another. So I think the talent is there. I don't think he's a injury risk. But what I would be concerned with is what is his mentality moving forward, you know, because sometimes you can get in situations like this and it messes you up from a mentality standpoint. So where are you at as a player? If we go out and make this trade, because you're going to have, I'm with you, Willie. I would try not to give up a second round. Third round, yes. But if you're going to give up that much, you got to make sure the guy you're getting, the physical talent is there. But I need guys that mentally is going to be there as well.
Yeah, to me, it's, as I was saying, that he's a younger player. He can grow with Cam Ward. They can grow together versus someone like Jonnu Smith, for example, who may only be here for a year or two, if that were a trade that the Titans would make with the Miami Dolphins. So I heard the report about Kyle Pitts over the weekend. I saw the report from Jordan Schultz. I heard the report from Jeremy Fowler. And I thought it was interesting because the tight end position has been a non-factor offensively for the Tennessee Titans in recent years. And then, Willie, as you described, if you're building a tight end from the ground up, if you're building a model tight end, that tight end will probably have the measurements of Kyle Pitts. He's 6'6". He's 250 pounds. He's dynamic, and he's dynamic when the ball's in his hands. So I'm intrigued by the idea. I'm not sure how realistic it is, however.
I'm not sure how realistic it is, and I'm curious in this game of poker if the Falcons are saying, you know what, we're going in a different direction, we might be able to really get something for this guy, and everybody else around the league's going, they're not going to keep him. If I wait this out, he could get cut, etc., or the price is going to drop. I think that's the game we're playing right now, because I can't help but look. We just talked about the circumstances. I get it, but he had 1,000 yards at age 21 as a rookie, and since then, he's had 1,300.
Since then, he has 1,625 receiving yards over 3 seasons, which is an average of 628 per 17 games.
356, 667, 602 are his yards the last 3 years. So that's 3 straight years. That's a lot of years in football age, right? And you're just wondering, what the heck? And I know a lot of it can be explained, but the fact is he's got to be considered a little bit of a gamble with a lot of a high ceiling, right? If you can catch it right. But I would hate to go to the mat and get him. We saw what happened with L'Jarius Sneed, right? They gave up a 3rd-round pick for a guy who's a little bit older, and you see how bad that's burning them right now. You would hate to, again, give up assets, pay big for Pitts, because now you're really in trouble if you do that. So I'm going to try to hold my 2nd-round pick and hope that the price drops or somehow he ends up on the street.
I don't think you can, I know you brought up the L'Jarius Sneed, but you can't allow that to scare you away from potentially signing a guy that can really change your offense, because I think that's what type of player he is. But there are some concerns, because I think the one concern is that you have to pay him. You're giving up this 2nd round or 3rd round pick, and then you have to pay him. And then you got to honor majority of that contract, depending on how you pay it. I would have rather got him if he still was under, at 2 more years left on the deal, maybe 3. And so now I'm still working on the previous contract, whether signing him to a bigger contract is almost like you come here, you prove it to me, and then I'll sign you. It may take you 2 years, but in this situation, it would be giving up a 2nd-round pick or a 3rd-round pick. And then if it doesn't work out, he's gone. You don't even have a chance to bring him back. Well, you do, but if it doesn't work out the first year, you're not going to bring him back and sign him to a big contract.
615-737-1025. There are reports out there about Kyle Pitts and his availability. Would you be interested in the Titans taking a run at Kyle Pitts? 615-737-1025. But coming up next, last week we heard from Will Levis. He broke his silence about the situation he finds himself in. Is the Titans' handling of Will Levis a sign of a dysfunctional franchise? Because one prominent NFL analyst did wonder that over the weekend, and we'll discuss that coming up next. 615-737-1025. The PFL World Championship semifinals are Thursday, June 12th at Municipal Auditorium, and you can be there. Text in the keyword MATCH, MATCH, to 615-737-1025 now to be entered to win a pair of VIP ringside tickets. Visit pflmma.com/schedule for more details.
Happy Monday, everyone. This is Derek Mason. You heard me tell you about Dr. Lodge and his staff at Cool Springs MD for some time. If you set out to lose weight, chances are it's not your first time setting a resolution to shed some extra pounds, only to face disappointment. But I have some solutions here. Got some questions, some answers for you. Because at Cool Springs MD, Dr. Lodge and his team understands the frustration of this cycle, and that is why they offer a different approach to weight loss. Their comprehensive weight loss program is led by Dr. Jeffrey Lodge. It addresses the root cause of weight gain with tailored nutrition, exercise, blood test supplements, and more. They will customize a program specific to you and you only. So connect with Dr. Lodge at CoolSpringsMD.com today to schedule your appointment for a personalized weight loss plan just for you. That's Cool Springs MD, where your weight loss journey becomes a success story.
D. Mace Finnegan and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Chris is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Chris wants to talk Kyle Pitts. Chris, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
Hey, the thing about Kyle Pitts, the situation is intriguing, but when you look at the front office of the Titans, they've stressed over and over that they want draft picks. And I just don't see them wanting to take this chance, giving up a second-round pick and then having to pay the guy when, you know, they got Chig, they got Wiley, and then they got Gunnar Helm. So I think they're probably going to go with what they got and they're probably not going to go down that road. They want draft picks. They don't want to give up draft picks.
Thank you for the call, Chris. And you're right. We have heard from Chad Brinker and Mike Borgonzi that they cherish those picks. Not enough to trade the number 1 overall pick, much to Willie's chagrin. But they do cherish those draft picks. And I'm going to be honest with you guys. Totally forgot about Gunnar Helm. So maybe Gunnar Helm becomes that tight end for Cam Ward. But I understand, Willie, the caller's point about not giving up draft picks because of the stated desire of the Titans front office to accumulate as many as they can.
Right. And also understanding where you are with your roster right now. Kyle Pitts, as great as he potentially is, and again, that's a dangerous word with potential. He alone is not going to put you over the top right now. So to give up an asset like a second-round pick and then pay him the capital, or the cap space you're going to have to eat up inevitably if you want him to be around for a while. That's a lot. And it could go bad, right? We don't know. He hasn't been productive, as great as a talent he is. So I am shying away. Now, if there's a possibility, and I don't know if this is likely, but you get him without giving up an asset, to me, that's a whole nother thing. But I tend to philosophically agree with the caller. You got to keep those picks.
Yeah, I can't see the Titans wanting to give up a second-round pick. Maybe not even a third-round pick. But I think you have to explore it. I think you have to see, where you're willing to go in order to bring in a guy like Kyle Pitts. And you're right, they have tight ends there already. They drafted the tight end, Gunnar Helm, and they got Chig, and I love Chig. But I think when you have an opportunity, when a player like this is out there, or potentially has the potential to be out there, I think a team like the Titans, you have to explore it. I'm not saying they need to give up the farm or give up a second, but I think you have to sit back and explore it, because what you want to do, I think you need to do whatever you have to make your rookie quarterback step out on this field on a right note. Make sure that he is as comfortable as he possibly can. And I'm not saying that getting Kyle Pitts will automatically make him that. I'm sure if he builds up the rapport with the guys, it may come to that. But when you add someone like that, you are telling your fan base in your front office, it's like, listen, we are doing everything possible to make sure that it works with our young quarterback moving forward. So, and that may not, and again, I'm not advocating and saying, give up a second or third, but I think you, as a team that you've only won 9 games, the last 2 or 3 seasons, you almost have to explore it, I think.
What's funny is I went to CBSSports.com and they have the timeline of events that saw Kyle Pitts go from a top 5 pick to underutilized asset. Listen to this paragraph. 2021 season, wide receiver room instantly self-implodes. At the time Pitts was drafted, the Falcons appeared to be building an offensive juggernaut around Matt Ryan, particularly with Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley headlining the receiver room. Their presence, in theory, should have given Pitts a softer landing in the NFL, with them commanding attention from opposing secondaries. And then what happened? Julio Jones was traded to Tennessee. How did that go? I don't remember.
Didn't go well. Didn't go well.
I'm being facetious, of course. So last week we heard from Will Levis for the first time. And as I said last week, the phrase break the silence, breaks his silence, breaks her silence, breaks their silence. It's overused to the point that it's lost all meaning. But in the case of Will Levis, I actually thought it was appropriate because we had not heard from Will Levis all summer or all spring. And we were waiting to hear his reaction to Cam Ward being drafted. And he put on a brave face, but you could tell he bit his tongue a couple of times. He tried to be as diplomatic as he could be about the situation he finds himself in. But for now, it appears that Will Levis and Cam Ward will coexist on the Titans roster. Remember, Mike Borgonzi said after the draft that they did not explore a Will Levis trade. So Mike Florio on Pro Football Talk was talking about the situation that the Tennessee Titans are in right now with Will Levis still on the roster, with Cam Ward. And this is what Mike Florio had to say about how the Will Levis situation reflects on the Titans.
That's what's so weird about this. You can find backup quarterbacks. Why are you insistent on keeping Levis around? And we always look for whispers and whiffs and signs of dysfunction. That keeps you in the dysfunctional category when you have 2 years with a young quarterback and it hasn't worked out and your team bottomed out and you earned the number 1 overall pick and you've drafted a quarterback. Most properly functioning teams would get rid of the guy that is being replaced because it's just a weird environment. It just adds weird and awkward into your mix. That's why, I said earlier this week, it's good for the Falcons that Kirk Cousins is staying away from OTAs. It removes the awkward quotient from Michael Penix Jr. trying to take over the team. You still got some of that. I mean, Cam Ward probably is unaffected by it, but there's going to be guys in the locker room who's like, this is weird. And you just want to minimize the reasons for anyone to say this is weird.
That was Mike Florio on Pro Football Talk. Him talking about how a properly functioning organization would have probably already found a way to move off of Will Levis. Derek, I thought Mike Florio explained it well. I saw the headline first and I said, that sounds a bit hyperbolic. But then I listened to it and it wasn't as nonsensical as I thought. So let's jump off of what Florio said. Is the Titans' handling of Will Levis a sign of a dysfunctional franchise?
I'm not going to go that far to say dysfunctional, but hey, listen, I know the minute as I'm saying that, people are screaming, they did this, they did this, and they did this. That's the sign of a dysfunctional organization. But I think where this organization is now, we are basing that on guys that are no longer here. Well, Brinker is still here, but the majority of those guys are all gone. Now they have sort of this new regime at the GM position. So, dysfunctional, I wouldn't go that far. I would say, is it ideal? No, because again, Florio's right. If you bottom up and you get the first pick and you draft a quarterback, whoever that backup is, more than likely is not on the roster as you move forward. There's not a chance. Now, the problem with Will Levis is this. Chicago was able to do it with Justin Fields because I think people still believed in Justin Fields. I think they just thought he got a raw deal in Chicago. So they still believe sort of in Justin Fields. So it was easier, I think, for Chicago to move Justin Fields than I think it is for the Titans to move Will Levis. Why? Because Will Levis has this, what do you call those things that they used to have back in, the 1600s where you used to have to walk around with this,
the scarlet letter?
Yeah, the chain, that thing around your neck saying you did something bad or you just a bad person.
A sandwich board?
I guess so. There's a historic name for it. I just don't know what it is now. Someone will tell me. I know in our text line.
I'll go with the scarlet letter for right now.
But that's Will Levis now. Justin Fields wasn't walking around with that, I don't think. Will Levis is. Why? Because when we talked about when we saw or talked about the Titans, it was always Will Levis did this. Will Levis did that. The coach just told him not to do that, and look what he did. So we don't speak of Will Levis glowingly. So the Titans can't get rid of him. They can't make a move with him. Why? Because there might not be a lot of suitors out there, and if there is one at all. So I think what the Titans want to do, and maybe I'm wrong, they want to get him going. They want to get him, okay, see, this is a different Will Levis. He's not going to be our starter, but boy, oh boy, he can push your starter.
The pump and dump that we talked about a few weeks ago.
Absolutely. It could be the pump and dump.
The pump and dump, baby.
Because to me, he doesn't have enough built up to say, for the Titans to say, okay, Will Levis is on the market, doors open, give me what you got. Nobody's going to come right now. They got to build this guy up and then see what happens. I don't expect them to go into the season with Will Levis as the quarterback. On this roster, unless there's an injury.
So Will Levis to you, Derek, is there used to be a spot near my house where people would just dump old furniture and they would just say, take it. So you think Will Levis is just standing on the street right now with a sign that says, free, take me?
I think Will Levis wants to be moved. But Will Levis, he's a team player. So he's going to try to make the best out of a situation that isn't ideal. Again, the minute they drafted Cam Ward, I even said he needs to get traded. He needs to be talking to his people behind scenes to try to facilitate something quickly, to get out of Tennessee. Not because you're mad or anything. You may be a little upset, but not because of anything. It's just because now you have no opportunity, none whatsoever. So let me go someplace where I can at least, and you may not even have an opportunity to be the backup, because I think they would go with Brandon Allen before they go with Will Levis.
Willie, your thoughts on what Florio had to say?
First of all, I love these references we're making. I'm picturing the pump and dump, and then now we've got the lowly furniture out in the alleyway.
See, he called him alley furniture. I didn't call Will Levis alley furniture.
There used to be just a plot of concrete.
You see it everywhere.
Right. There used to be a plot of concrete on Gallatin Road, not far from my house, not far from the YMCA, Willie, where people would just leave old furniture. And if you wanted it, come get it. So that's Will Levis at this point, I suppose.
Yeah, I think he's getting close. But I don't think the Titans want that, right? I think that's what they want to not do. But they haven't pumped him up enough to get anything for him. And the other thing is I love the literary reference to Hester Prynne in The Scarlet Letter. Like, that was another book. I'm flashing back to my junior year English class. I think I was supposed to read that more thoroughly than I did. But the premise, right? You're the failed, you're the shamed person, right? In the community, right? That's everybody who's been on the Titans sees Will Levis and they're thinking, here's the guy that we tried to put our eggs in that basket and it hasn't worked. And here he's walking around. It's a tricky situation. I get what Mike Florio was saying. So I think the Scarlet Letter thing, D Mace is thinking, so I'm curious what it is, what D Mace is thinking of, but I think they're both dead on. And it can be a little bit awkward. And I think it's best for everybody if they find the new home. But they don't want to leave him out in the here, take him, he's free kind of thing, right? Because I think there's that, what if he turns into even a Malik Willis? We're like, well, you didn't get anything for this guy. He's not that bad, right? Because that's what really burns you for a long time.
One texter says, John says, nobody's coming for Levis's pump and dump scheme. It does not appear so. Perhaps we need to hook him up with Chris Maltasanti and Matthew Bevilacqua for their Wabistic scheme on the, was that the second season of The Sopranos, for you Sopranos fans out there? One texter says, if Levis is not good enough to even be a backup, what team is going to trade for him? I understand that as well. Yeah. And it comes down to what happens in training camps around the NFL. Maybe a quarterback gets hurt. Maybe a backup quarterback somewhere else doesn't pan out. And it ends up being like what happened with Malik Willis last year. Malik Willis was traded at the end of August for a 7th round pick. And maybe that's the best you can do for Will Levis at this point because his value probably could not be any lower than it already is, unless your social media team would love to have some excellent memes, then his value is off the charts. But I just think that I said this with Derek last week when we were at the golf course, that I don't anticipate Will Levis being a distraction in the sense that he is going to say something controversial or, cause locker room issues. But I just think his presence in the locker room, as Mike Florio said, is hella weird. I just think that, especially if Cam Ward struggles, I agree with you, Derek, that in that case, I think Brandon Allen would probably be first up, not Will Levis. But that there will be Titans fans that say, get Levis back in there, give him a chance. And I think you want to remove the possibility of that by any means necessary.
Absolutely. You don't want to take a situation like that. And listen, I'm not saying that it would be that, but I'm sure it worked out for the Commanders, back when they were the Redskins.
They were the Redskins.
Yeah, when they drafted RJ.
They drafted Robert Griffin and
Jr.
Kirk Cousins.
And Kirk Cousins.
Yes.
Had that injury not happened, I'm sure there would have been contention in that room because both of those guys, one guy was drafted, second overall, I believe, and was the face of the franchise. The other guy was drafted in the 4th round, but showed he could be a starting quarterback in this league. They couldn't ride with both of them. And now the injury to RG3 was so catastrophic that he was just never the same player. But let's just say he had an injury sort of like Drew Brees, where you knew he was going to come back. And then now you got Kirk Cousins playing really well. You couldn't keep both of those guys in the same locker room. You just couldn't, because there was going to be those that were going to pick sides. It was just going to happen that way, whether it be through losing or through winning. There was going to be a side picked, especially if Kirk Cousins, which he was playing really well, and then he had to sit the bench once RG came back. And if they both were playing well, they can't have a situation where I believe that Will Levis, you go into a season with Will Levis as your starting as your backup quarterback. I just think it brings unnecessary attention or unnecessary sort of, I don't know, talk at a position or toward a position that doesn't need to be there. Because if Cam Ward's not playing well or he struggles, then it's almost, do we go to Will Levis? And then if Will Levis come in, he plays well, what do? You've been in the same situation that the Indianapolis Colts were in with Richardson. Now you got to make a decision. Yeah. So to me, you move on from Will Levis, find him another spot. I still think he can play in this league, and I think he can play a lot of years. Find a spot for him, see what you can get for him, and let Brandon Allen and whoever else be your backup quarterback. And there's and I repeat, no history with all of that prior to you, and there's no true scare in regards to taking Cam Ward's job.
615.
I think if they could have done it, I think that real quick, I think if they could have done it already, they probably would have. It's a question of how long can they wait and keep him around until they just decide to bail. So it goes back to your original question, Adam. Is this a sign of dysfunctional franchise? I don't think it's that big. I think we're reading too much in it. But if Mike Borgonzi, it shows the dilemma that you have. You have, take away the human side of it. It's asset management. Let me get something for this asset that we drafted in the 2nd round, so we don't just kill the asset and it's gone. But at the same time, it's human. All these human components that we have day in and day out, what effect is that having on the team to where you had to hit the point where okay, this is a sunk cost. I tried, but it's time to move forward.
615-737-1025. Is the Titans' handling of Will Levis a sign of a dysfunctional franchise, as Mike Florio laid out on Pro Football Talk? 615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on that. Coming up next, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025, 1063, The Game.
You can't. In Tennessee, you can't. In Tennessee, there are 4 guys who are competing ostensibly to be the starting quarterback: Cam Ward, Will Levis, Brandon Allen, Tim Boyle. And we showed some B-roll, as the cool kids in the industry say, yesterday of Cam Ward. Cam Ward looks like the real deal. Cam Ward just has that effortless Mahomesian flick of the wrist BB. Just, and I first noticed it with his pro day workout, and I can't imagine at the end of the day it not being Cam Ward week 1 and week 2 and every week for every year that he's healthy enough to play for as long as his career lasts, Michael.
That was Mike Florio on Cam Ward. Same episode, he was talking about whether the Titans are a dysfunctional franchise or are showing signs of a dysfunctional franchise because Will Levis is still on the roster.
Mm-hmm.
And Florio and his co-host were trying to come up with recent examples that mirror what's been going on in Tennessee with Cam Ward and Will Levis. And the one that Florio came up with was Josh Rosen and Kyler Murray in Arizona. Arizona traded up to number 10 overall to draft Josh Rosen in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, as I was doing research on this should be inducted into the Unfortunate Comments Hall of Fame. After Josh Rosen was drafted 10th overall, he said, and I quote, "There were 9 mistakes made ahead of me, and I'm going to make sure they all know it was a mistake." How'd that work out for you, Josh Rosen? Oh, boy. Freezing cold takes exposed right there,
wow.
Josh Rosen. But Josh Rosen traded.
That one should have been measured in Kelvin degrees.
Yeah.
Oh, man. That's instant frostbite. You touch that,
That's
you're
right.
losing the tip of your finger.
Right. The tip of your finger is gone. It's
Yes.
gone.
So Rosen started 13 games for the Cardinals in 2018. The Cardinals went 3-10 in those 13 games. They then clinched the number 1 overall pick in 2019, selecting Kyler Murray. Arizona traded Josh Rosen to the Dolphins the next day. Murray was drafted on a Thursday. Josh Rosen was shipped out of town on a Friday. Now, I'm not saying that's what the Titans should have done necessarily, but that was the one example that Florio could come up with, Willie, recently of 2 young quarterbacks, because it's different when it's Cam Ward and Joe Flacco, for example, a guy that you know is near the end of his career. It's talking about 2 young quarterbacks and the young starting quarterback being replaced by another young quarterback. That does not happen very often. I believe you asked Tim Hasselbeck about this last week, and even he couldn't come up with a recent example. But Florio came up with the Josh Rosen, Kyler Murray example, and Rosen was sent out of town the day after the Cardinals drafted Kyler Murray.
And I remember distinctly on our show, and I don't think we were the only show that were just curious to see if they would be able to move Will Levis the day after drafting Cam Ward, right? We all thought it was a possibility. So I think it's very reasonable that they've been trying to find a landing spot. They just haven't found it, just because Will Levis just doesn't have a lot of trade value. Evidently any trade value right now. But I think that the question I asked Tim is the one that I still come back to, as to how long can you wait before you have to move forward? Because under the best case scenario, the failed young starter sticks around and becomes a viable backup underneath the new guy you draft. There's not a lot of examples in pro football history of that working. It's much more, you give the guy a new address, he gets a fresh start, your team gets a fresh start, and you put everything, you get the mentor behind the new young guy, and you start a brand new chapter. So I would love for somebody who really can rack their brain and find an example of a Will Levis settling in as a backup example in history.
Yeah, it's hard, especially for a young guy. Again, if this was Will Levis in his 7th or 8th year, then okay, it's a little bit harder to swallow. But you're talking about a young guy that still thinks he can play or believes he can play in this league. And it's not like, he signed this huge deal and he still has 3-4 years left on the deal. No, he's trying to put himself in a position to earn more money as he goes. Now, listen, many would say, well, you had a chance and you didn't do right by it in a sense. And I get that part. But in this situation, I think because, again, unless something happens to Cam Ward, knock on wood, nothing will, I can't see him starting the season, one, as the starter, but then two, I just can't see him on this roster, at when the season starts, because again, he's going into a year where he wants an extension eventually. I'm sure he wants another contract, and he's not going to be able to get it here because he's not going to be the starter. He's not going to get any playing time outside of the starting quarterback get hurt. And then again, I think they would go with Brandon Allen before they go with Will Levis. So if I'm Will Levis in this team, I'm like, let me go somewhere else where I have an opportunity early. I can truly compete for a starting job where people are not looking at my past transgressions and saying he's never going to get over it. Move me somewhere else where I have an opportunity to play, to earn more money, to earn another contract. He's not going to get that opportunity to be a starter here.
I think
of course, and Adam, when they signed Brandon Allen, they were telegraphing to everybody that was the quintessential non-threatening career backup. No, has a background with the coaching staff. It was the quintessential, this is the guy you have to back up the number 1 overall pick, right? So they did it before, and then they brought in Boyle as just, I guess, an extra body to have in case. So it makes sense that Will Levis was clearly out of the plans, but they just haven't found the landing spot. And can I just mention as a sidebar, Adam, on the Mike Florio falling in love with Cam Ward, man, he looks good. Wow, that release! Oh,
he fell for the social media
I didn't
trap.
even want to comment on it.
That's what I was going to say. He saw the Adam Vingan slow motion spiral. Great catch, the perfect rep caught in a play with no defense and no pads on. And now we're making, he's going to start game 1, game 2. He's going to start forever. That was
hook, line, and sinker.
Got him.
Yep, got another one.
Somewhere in some office at the Titans facility, there is a social media manager hearing that, rubbing his or her hands together, going, yeah, my plan is coming together.
We got him.
Yes. Well, I think Tim mentioned Mason Rudolph as an example of a younger quarterback who started games, that went back to the backup role, then went back to starting during his first trip to Pittsburgh.
Mason Rudolph was never brought in to be the starter.
Exactly. Correct.
Like when they drafted Will Levis, their intention was to give him a shot to be the starter. So much so that after the first year, now they still had Ryan Tannehill, right? But they were thinking this is the heir apparent. Tannehill's got 1 more year, and then Levis is the guy. I think it's fair to say that Mason Rudolph was not drafted with that in mind. What round was Mason Rudolph drafted in? He wasn't like the
Rudolph
Titans
was a
up,
3rd round pick in 2018.
3rd round pick. So I don't think they were trading up to get him or anything like that. But I think that's maybe in the ballpark, but I would not say that's lined up.
One texter says the league is waiting for Will Levis to go on clearance. Now I'm imagining when I want to buy something and I put it in my shopping cart, I'm like, well, the July 4th sales will start in a couple of weeks. So if I just leave it in there for 2 weeks, maybe it'll fall 30%, 40%. And then you hope and you wish and you pray, and maybe that thing you want goes on clearance. So I guess that is what other teams around the league are going to be doing. One texter says he will be cheap to keep since he is on the last year of his rookie contract.
True.
The Titans will end up paying whoever his replacement is a lot more than what Levis is due. I suppose that means next year. They don't have to find his replacement this year. They have Brandon Allen and Tim Boyle. But yes, they do have him on his rookie contract. One texter says, nobody wants Will Levis. He is not a starting NFL caliber quarterback. And in my opinion, I don't think he's a backup quarterback either. He needs to go to tight end or fullback
Man, is that a
Okay.
ball? Is that a Tennessee fan? Or?
I don't know.
Because for that person to say he's not even a backup, man. I saw some really bad quarterbacks, and if you're saying Will Levis is not even a backup, he shouldn't even suit up. Goodness gracious. I mean, listen, it's not ideal. And you just only wonder what the Titans are thinking right now. Are they holding on to Will Levis because there isn't any suitors and there weren't no serious suitors during the draft? Or do they really believe that Will Levis can improve enough to be their backup? Only time will tell. But I think if we didn't have such an attachment to this team, if we were outside looking in and just looking at this franchise from afar, I think we would believe, like, why are they keeping both of them? Like, shouldn't they get rid of Will Levis, or shouldn't they have already gotten rid of Will Levis via trade? So we'll see.
615-737-1025. Your thoughts on the continuing Will Levis saga, if we can even call it that. But I'm going to. 615-737-1025. Speaking of Cam Ward, a list at Sports Illustrated ranking the NFL's 32 coach and quarterback duos in 2025. Where are Cam Ward and Brian Callahan, and how far can they climb in 2025? We'll discuss that next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan. 1025-1063. The Game.
Okay, time to tell you about Loan Pronto. You can get cash out now if you've got some financial needs for a project. Maybe it's a home improvement project. Maybe it's a project of getting that credit card bill down to zero. Well, Loan Pronto has what you need. The Rapid Equity Loan Program at Loan Pronto. You can get approved in less than 24 hours. Instant approvals, low rates, no hard credit pull up front. Your home's equity is yours, so get cash to consolidate and use that cash to hit what you need. Call Loan Pronto for a free instant home appraisal and see how much cash you can save or can get today. Loan Pronto is A+ rated by the BBB, and they have nearly 2,500 five-star Google reviews. Find out more. 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 1661781 on approved credit, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
D-Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3. The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Teron Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter, will join us at 1 o'clock. So Sports Illustrated, gentlemen, ranked the NFL's 32 coach quarterback duos for 2025. So here's how they did the exercise. They gave each quarterback and each coach a numerical value, 1 through 32, added them up. The higher the score, the worse you are. So where do you think the Tennessee Titans, the combination of Brian Callahan and Cam Ward, out of 32 teams, where do you think they landed on this list?
They're in the third. I say 30.
Willie?
They should get. They haven't been around long enough, but I'm going to say they have no street cred. They haven't done anything, no skins on the wall, so I'm going to say 30.
You are both correct. It is indeed 30. Brian Callahan ranked 28th. Cam Ward ranked 28th for a total score of 56. Care to venture a guess as to the two quarterback coach combinations that are behind Brian Callahan and Cam Ward?
Man, it has to be. Well, heck, you got to count New Orleans. New Orleans.
The
and
Saints. The Saints are 1. The Saints are 32.
Mm-hmm.
So who's 31?
I say the Giants.
You say the Giants. I say, oh boy. I would tend to the Jets. No, not the Jets. The Jets. The Jets.
Say it with your chest, Derek Mason. It is indeed the Jets.
Oh, there we go.
At 31. Yes. So the Titans are at 30 with a combined score of 56. Callahan 28, Cam Ward 28. The Jets are at 59. Aaron Glenn is 30. Justin Fields is 29 for a total of 59. And the Saints at 64. Kellen Moore and Tyler Shuck 32 out of 32 each. So the Titans start the season 30 of 32. Here's my question, because they're obviously not going to climb all the way to number 1. I'm wondering how far we all think the Titans can climb on this list so that this time next year, if we're doing the same exercise, we're talking about, hey, the Titans, they were 30th last year on this list. Now they're at 24th. But before you answer that question, Willie and Derek, and we'll start with Willie, let me just tell you some of the other teams that are directly in front of the Tennessee Titans. At number 29, the Atlanta Falcons with Raheem Morris and Michael Penix Jr. At 28, the Cleveland Browns with Kevin Stefanski and Joe Flacco. At 27, the Bears with Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams. At 26, the G-Men, Brian Daboll and Russell Wilson.
Okay, so I was in the ballpark with my G-Men.
And 25.
I did predict them to go to the playoffs last year.
You did indeed. And at 25, the Panthers with Dave Canales and Bryce Young. So best case scenario, Willie, when Sports Illustrated is doing this exercise next summer, how high do you think the Titans could possibly climb if everything works out well?
It's relative to the rest of the league. And so I'm not quite as worried about how many notches exactly, but I think what you want is you want some traction. You want some roots down to where you feel like, okay, I'm moving in the right direction. I got my coach. I got my quarterback. Let's keep building. That's the goal. So if they got into, I'm thinking of Casey Kasem's top 40, up 5 notches to number 25, it's the Titans. Remember old Casey, the AT top 40? I could be dating Adam there. I don't know if
I am familiar with Casey Kasem.
He caught him at the tail end.
If they can get to between 20 and 24, I think that would be reasonable progress. And this goes back to what we talked about. It's not going to be determined by the number of wins next year. It's the feel. It's the feeling. Do I have something? Do I have roots in the ground?
So, Willie, what you're saying is that the Tennessee Titans should keep their feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars.
Yes.
Boom. You nailed it. Boy, did I tee that up for you, Adam. That was awesome.
You teed it up for him, Willie.
Yes.
Nice job.
Can we get some? Maybe David can dig up some Casey Kasem. Some
sooner or later here.
And there's some dirty Casey Kasem where he was caught like off mic reaming somebody out in the studio. It is hilarious, but we cannot play that on the show.
Oh man. Well, listen. If you're the Titans, they have to show improvement. Now, the Titans are they're not looking at it based upon what SI says or the articles that they write. They want to see improvement, development, from the head coach and the quarterback. That's what they want to see. Now, does it equate to wins? Maybe, maybe not. But I think if they see that development, then in their minds, they think they're in a good space. I can't say what these other teams are going to do. And I'm like, Willie, it's like, really, how do they determine SI, meaning if once they put out their, sort of ranking next year, how will they determine whether Cam Ward and Brian Callahan has jumped 3, 4, 5, 6? Are they basing it upon wins? Are they basing it upon the stats? What are they?
Well, let me read to you what Sports Illustrated wrote about the Titans, because they had little blurbs for each team. Quote, Tennessee could shoot up the rankings after Callahan had no chance, according to Sports Illustrated, to succeed as a first-year coach with Will Levis as his quarterback. While Ward is a rookie, he gives the Titans the long-term upside they haven't had since the days of Steve McNair, should Ward pan out. If Ward proves he's worthy of being the number one pick, Tennessee won't be at the bottom of the heap for long.
Yeah, and he's right. And that's what the Titans are hoping, that, he proved to be worth the number one pick overall. But, how do they rank, improvement or development? Are they basing it upon, their record next year? Because you could conceivably, the quarterback can be developing, but the team's still not winning because you don't have enough pieces around them. So I wonder how, and the Titans never said how they're going to judge. They just said they're going to hold people accountable. Well, what does that mean? What classifies as developing? What classifies as getting better? Is it winning games, or is it developing a quarterback, but we may not be winning enough games to get in the playoffs?
So I'm looking at the two teams below the Titans on this list, the Jets and the Saints. So the Jets have a new coach in Aaron Glenn. It's his first time as a head coach in the NFL. He's been around the league for a long time, but this is his first opportunity as a head coach. And then there's Justin Fields, who's now on his third team in as many years. So that's why the Jets are ranked below the Titans on this list. And then with the Saints, you have a first-year head coach in Kellen Moore and a second round, or Shuck was a second rounder or a third rounder, I can't recall. He was a second round pick. Mm-hmm. And this coming after Derek Carr's sudden retirement. So I can understand why the Saints are at the bottom of this list, because they have a new head coach and a quarterback who perhaps wasn't going to be the starting quarterback, at least not right away, who was in line to be the starting quarterback.
And this is why I don't understand how SI is doing this.
There is no methodology listed as to why they're doing
it. Because it was an utter disaster in Indianapolis. A utter disaster.
Let's find out where the Colts are on
and
this
they
list.
got them ranked. And they're not high.
Worst case scenario.
Exactly.
Right?
They're not high. They're 24th.
They are 24th.
Yes, but that was I would have, if I'm thinking about it realistically, I am putting them last, because it was an utter disaster last year. And I can't see, how does this thing go right after what they did in the offseason as far as going out and get Daniel Jones? How does this thing go right between Steichen and Richardson?
So the Colts, SI has Steichen ranked 18th and Richardson ranked 30th for a total of 48.
Why is Steichen? They botched that whole thing last year. Botched it all. Again, I think, and we talk about this, like the Indianapolis Colts are like the Yankees. I'm like one of those teams that you just, no matter what, you give them the benefit of the doubt. Like, they can be doing horrible, but it's always, they got this and they're doing, and we've done that to Indianapolis.
It's an annual
years.
Summer tradition right before the start of training camp. So it'll be about 6 weeks from now or so, like a week or two out of training camp, mid-July, late July. We have Good Morning Football on in the studio. It's an annual rite of summer. Look out for the Colts this year.
Yes.
They're going to be great. Surprise team, Indianapolis Colts. Every summer, it feels like the Colts are the team that people, for lack of a better term, slobber all over, whether or not it's deserved.
Shane Steichen hasn't proven anything since he's been in Indianapolis. He hasn't proven anything. Since he's left Philadelphia, he hasn't proven much. And again, like, what are the criteria? How are you ranking these? That's why I look at this and I think, well, the Titans are not going to look at it like this. They are going to look at it as, hopefully, it's not about how many games you win. You hope that come along with the development of the quarterback, but you want to see if the quarterback is developing within the system that you have. Because if he's not, now you got to get rid of the system, which means you got to get rid of the head coach.
The Jaguars, by the way, Willie, are 23rd, one ahead of the Colts. Liam Cohen ranked 29th. Trevor Lawrence ranked 17th for a total of 46 points.
If you're behind the Jaguars, you can't be feeling too good about things because, and that goes to, are we looking more ahead of where we think it's going or how they got to this point? That would be what I would want to know.
Let's read the introduction. Let's read the introduction of this story. In the NFL, nothing matters if you don't have the right coach quarterback combination. In the Super Bowl era, there have been 59 champions. Only 9 have won a title without a quarterback who wasn't an All-Pro / Hall of Famer, or a coach who certainly will or already has ended up in the Hall of Fame. Those rare squads include the 1985 Bears, the 2000 Baltimore Ravens, the 2007 and 11 New York Giants, and the 2017 Philadelphia Eagles. Over the past 2 years, Sports Illustrated has ranked those duos in the spring, giving us a look at which teams have the best shot at making a serious run at winning it all. In 2023, the Kansas City Chiefs earned top billing with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes and won their second consecutive Super Bowl. Last year, the Philadelphia Eagles were ranked 13th and made a big move to earn a ring. Below, we gave each team a numerical value, which was assigned by the combination of their quarterback and coaches ranking. The lower, the better.
There's just no, like for the Titans, there's so little data. You have one season of your coach and 0 seasons for your quarterback. So you're kind of starting from the back to begin with because there's just not a lot of sample size.
One texter. Oh boy. Ben in Cumberland City, not Indy Ben, but Ben with 2 N's, at least according to how we have him logged in the
Jamie
system.
Ben?
Maybe Jamie Ben in Cumberland City says, must suck for Indy to live rent-free in y'all's head, knowing full well that roster is way better than the clown show the Titans are. Better record, smashed y'all 4 games in a row.
I refuse
owned y'all for 20 years. Grow up.
That's got to be Indy Ben.
It does not say Indy Ben.
It's got to be. Come on. Or his cousin.
Ben from Cumberland City. Ben from Cumberland City. To quote Stephen A. Smith, I'll say this. I don't care. I have no horse in this race, no pun intended, with the Colts. But if you've lived around here, you know that every summer the Colts get propped up by the national media.
And I buy into it sometimes.
I've bought into it at times as well. And then something happens. You know, Jonathan Taylor doesn't practice and has a contract impasse with the team, or Anthony Richardson, who knows, whatever. But I'm just telling you, check back with me in about 6 weeks when we turn on Good Morning Football or something, and they're just all over the Colts. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. 615-737-1025. Teron Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter, will join us coming up next as we focus our attention not on the Indianapolis Colts, but the Tennessee Titans. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. D-Mace, Finnegan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. And we are presented by Bet365. Whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan joined on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, by ESPN, NFL Nation, Titans reporter, Teron Davenport. Teron, how are you today?
Hey, I'm doing really well. How you guys doing?
We're good. So you were there at OTAs last week. We heard from Will Levis for the first time since the Titans courted and ultimately drafted Cam Ward. I thought he made the best of a bad situation. He put on a brave face, as I've said, and answered questions about his future with the team and how it felt for him to watch the Titans court and ultimately draft Cam Ward. What did you make of how Levis handled those questions? And I'm wondering if you think if push will have to come to shove at some point, and if it's best for the franchise to remove Will Levis from the locker room, because I'm not saying he's going to be a distraction. He's not going to act out. But I'm wondering if just his presence could ultimately be a distraction for the Titans as this season progresses.
Yeah, I don't think his presence would be a distraction. I think everybody is grown. They understand the situation and the change from last year to this year. So I think he'll be fine. But I do like the way he handled it. I think he is taking on a bad situation head on. And he's willing to put in the work. He's already done that. And he's just going to continue to try to put the best foot forward. And I mean, you can't expect nothing less from him. So I think that's good that he did that. It's obviously not a situation anybody wants to be in. He accepts it and understands it, and he's just going to work through it.
You wrote a story for ESPN.com that published this morning about Cam Ward already earning the respect from the Titans veterans and the offensive linemen. And reporting out this story and talking to people, what did you learn about how Cam Ward has gone about earning that respect?
Yeah, there's just a cool calmness to him that seems to rub off on others, and it's something that these guys recognize. And that story kind of came together just from different offensive linemen going out of their way to praise him. And I thought it was pretty cool. Like, it started with Skoronski and just rolled into everyone else. And, you know, J.C. Latham was very complimentary of him being a leader and doing things the way he does. And it just seems like he's a guy that has a relaxing presence, and that's even to the veterans.
The Titans had nearly perfect attendance at OTAs when reporters were out there last week. The notable exception, Jeffrey Simmons. I know that Derek has been adamant that he feels that Jeffrey Simmons should be there. I know that Brian Callahan said that if there's one player I'm not worried about preparing for the season, it's Jeffrey Simmons. Where do you fall on whether or not Jeffrey Simmons should have been at OTAs?
Yeah, I'm kind of in between. I think it's a situation where it's like, hey, optically, it looks good if he's there. And also, in addition to that, being there, the importance of it, I don't think for Jeffrey Simmons is as much to him being ready for the season, because we know, like Brian Callahan said, that that's going to be the case. I think it's more for the camaraderie, the team building, and those type of things. And it's interesting because J.C. Latham, so he was working out in Dallas with Dan Moore Jr. as well as Trey Smith. And he said that he pulled Trey Smith aside and was like, hey, man, you guys won a lot of close games. Why is it? Like, what is it to your team? And Trey Smith talked about the closeness and the camaraderie that they have, which is what Brian Callahan and the crew, they're striving to build that this year. So the earlier you could get a jump on that, the better. But I don't think it's the end of the world.
Yeah, TD, and my sentiment was this. I know Jeffrey's going to work hard. I don't question whether he's going to be ready for a season, because I think he has proven that. Now, do I want the production to get better? Absolutely, I do.
Yeah.
But I think in this time, this critical time, when you look at your record and it's been 9-32, no one gets a pass. No one. I think everybody has to be there. And I am pointing sort of the arrow at Simmons, because this is the guy that over the last two seasons, prior to this one, they've been trying to push him as the leader. He's been saying he's the leader of this team. And my thing was, hey, listen, if you want to be a leader, man, sometimes you have to sacrifice those things. And I thought one would be a sacrifice here was, I know you're working hard, but this team is 9-32. You need to tell your trainer, hey, I'll see you in a couple of days. Let me go down here just at least to the start of camp. I know it's not voluntary, but these young guys need to see me out there, because the only thing they know about this team is that they have a 9-32 record over the last 2.5 seasons. So me, as a guy that's a leader, supposedly, I got to be there.
Yeah, no, it sends a message to me if he's there. And as you mentioned, if he changes his routine and is there, it sends a message, and it places a higher level of importance. And to me, when I look at that, like, you know, if he's there, you know, what can Tavondre Sweat say about not being there, right? You know what I mean? And that's not to say that he's been absent. He wasn't there when we were there last week, but like, if Jeff is there, like, no one else has an excuse, and I think that's something that should be noted.
Now, what do you think? Because I know you've spoken with Denard Wilson, and I think a lot of this, man, I truly do. I think a lot of this and what the Titans will be able to do, hopefully, a lot of it does hinge. I know it's the quarterback, but a lot of it does hinge on whether Denard Wilson can get this defense to being, legitimately a top, 10 defense. I know they were number 2 overall, but when you look at points given up, they were damn near dead last. What has been sort of the thing with Denard Wilson this season that you've seen or that he said?
Communication and everybody just doing their own job. It was funny because on one of the plays that Cam Ward, he hit one of the guys like on a deep dig route, and Denard Wilson went crazy on the linebacker because he didn't drop back enough. You know, those types of things, the little things that make a difference in a play. It seems like that's the focus. And he did say he's going to call games a little bit differently. We'll see how that works. But yeah, there's going to be a difference in him, and I think he's just working to reduce the mental errors and those types of things. And to me, like, what you emphasize and focus on, those usually are the results.
Teron Davenport is with us. Teron, we've focused so much on Cam Ward. I'm curious, who has maybe caught your attention among the rookie class? From a coach that said something, or your observation, anybody that you've got on your radar?
Yeah, well, I like Femi Oladejo looks really good with that number 7 on. It's a pretty sweet number for an outside linebacker. But I mean, look, Alec Iomanner is the one that really caught my attention, and it just, whenever I watch him and see him, I start to like him a little bit more. I was watching him last week, and the way he comes off the ball, when it's snapped, like every route there's somewhat of a sense of urgency to it. Now, I'm not saying the sense of urgency like Calvin Ridley has, because that's the most urgent player that I've seen run routes, but I still feel like I like the way he sells the 9 route, and I like the way he just digs in and runs his routes. He catches the ball pretty well. He had a nice diving catch at practice last week. It was a corner route he ran, and Cam Ward just kind of guided him towards the sideline, and he dove and caught it, and popped up, and that was a really good play. So yeah, Iron Manor is the rookie that stands out to me.
Can you give us a little more insight on the J.C. Latham? Because just from a macro, from where I sat last year, I saw a guy that looked very promising as a left tackle, did some good things, clearly was very young, has a lot to grow into, but his ceiling looks high. I didn't really hear, maybe I missed it, but I didn't hear a whole lot about, man, he's got to drop some weight. He's got to lose weight to really be what he wants to be. Tell me where that came from, the wanting to reshape yourself as he moves over to the other side.
Yeah, he said it was the Texans game. That's when he really started to begin to have that thought process, right? And, Daniil Hunter gave him work. Will Anderson, his teammate at Alabama, gave him work, and it was an embarrassing game for him. That's what he said. And so I think really that the losing weight That goes all the way back to the season opener against the Bears, man. Darryl Taylor hit him with an inside move and ended up, knocking Levis silly and made him fumble. And that was a key turnover in the game. So you have those things that happen. And when you lose weight, he was up to, he said, between 365 and 370. Like, that's big. And when you lose weight, it allows you to better stay in front of the pass rusher, and that's something that he's looking to do. And, he told me that he changed his diet. He eats a lot of salmon, with asparagus, and he likes to have like a cauliflower mash. It's kind of like a mashed potato, but it's made with cauliflower, and he snacks on granola bars. And like, it's not the best snack, but like, that's what I do. And he eats 2 times a day. And it's been really just like focusing on the calorie intake, like counting that and keeping that manageable. And it's worked so far. He's down to 327, 337, I believe. And he said he wants to get to 325. So we'll see how it works.
Teron Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter, joining us on D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, as he does every Monday at 1 o'clock. Teron, great stuff as always, my friend. We'll chat next week.
All right, for sure. Appreciate you guys.
Teron Davenport on the program. And Willie, I'm glad you brought up J.C. Latham, because I was meaning to talk about J.C. Latham and his physical transformation last week. We didn't get a chance to get to it. Also, you know what sounds incredibly unappetizing? Cauliflower mash. I'm sure I've had it at some point. Doesn't sound great.
I'm sure I haven't. I'm sure I have not.
I might have had it as a side dish, maybe underneath sometimes you have the bed of cauliflower mash on top of the fish or the steak. I don't know. But J.C. Latham was on Bussin' with the Boys with Taylor Lewan and Will Compton recently.
You know what I mean? Like, he's going to be okay. And then they saw how I was moving out there, and Saban was like, okay, he's good. So having the thumbs up approval from Saban, I was like, okay, I know how this is going to go. They're going to say I need to lose weight. As soon as they see how I move out here, they're going to say I'm good. And then after a while, I was like, you know what? Like, this is a different speed, so I definitely should lose weight. But I'm not going to say I was playing good, but I was playing like relatively like honestly good. Like, you know what I mean? So I was like thinking like, well, I don't think my weight's that much of an issue. And I literally remember thinking that like after we played the Chargers, like, because I did a really good job in pass pro, and the only sacks that I remember, Bud Dupree had 2, and it was like off of like a late spin when Will tried to escape the pocket up, and that's where his sacks came from. And I remember I was like, man, I just played Bosa and Bud Dupree, and I've been doing good up until this point. I don't think my weight's an issue. And like from there, it was really bad.
So that was J.C. Latham on Bussin' with the Boys explaining his physical transformation. And as Teron mentioned, he's down into the 330s, 335, 336, that range. And I saw a picture of J.C. Latham, who weighs twice as much as I do, and he looks better at 340 pounds than I do at my weight.
Because
like
his is muscle.
Yeah, he is a cut 330 plus pounds, but clearly he felt that his weight got to him in the second half of the season, and it led to him not playing to the best of his ability. But Derek, also with the fact that Latham is now shifting over to right tackle, what do you make of J.C. Latham's physical transformation and his reasons for it?
I think he's doing what a professional does. I think he's doing what guys that want to be great. They find something in their game that they can improve each and every year. Listen, as a rookie, I know he probably thought it was good. He played against Bosa and those guys and Dupree, and he felt he did a good job. I wouldn't say Dupree. I mean, Dupree, he showed he's okay, but he's no Joey Bosa. But he was able to do a good job on Joey Bosa, and I think sometimes when that happens, you get this false sense of I'm good. But then the game has a way of humbling you. I don't care how big or strong or fast you are, it finds a way to humble you. And he got humble, and he understood very quickly, like, listen, I can't come in the same player this season as I finished last season. I got to come in a much better player. And part of it is changing my diet, changing my physique, knowing that I'm on the other side now, being more comfortable on that side, so to speak. I want to be a perennial all pro. I want to be someone that the Titans can count on. All that comes if you transform your body, you transform, your technique somewhat. You get better, stronger, bigger, and more knowledgeable about the position. So this is why for rookies, it's so hard to, you know, truly like get on them, because you know how hard the season is, especially for guys that are in the trenches each and every play. It's like, yeah, they may do well at the beginning, but then fatigue sets in. The strain and the length of a NFL season, how grueling it is, it starts to wear on you, and you start to play, your play starts to dip some. And we saw that in JC Latham, and he even explained it. So he wanted to make sure that he went into the offseason, that he comes back, that 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 the weight, even though he felt he was okay at one point, but he understood these guys are much bigger, stronger, and fast. I need to get some of this weight down. Now he will come into camp feeling more comfortable, I believe, at the weight he's at now. And he even said he wanted to drop more than that. So you just try to do whatever you can as a player to make sure that when you come in the next following season, you're better than what you left off.
615-737-1025. Your thoughts on JC Latham dropping a whole lot of weight, basically dropping my toddler in weight. My toddler's around 40 pounds, so he dropped an entire Arlo. I guess we could call it that. 615-737-1025. Coming up next, we have heard from Jeffrey Simmons, sort of. We'll discuss that next. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game. So that was a social media video posted by Jeffrey Simmons over the weekend, I believe on Saturday. Another one of those glossy social media videos, Willie. Lots of action shots of Jeffrey Simmons lifting heavy weights, pounding it on the treadmill, doing that thing with the ropes that I don't understand that you see athletes do all the time. And it's almost like Jeffrey Simmons and his social media team were like, hey, we gotta show that you're working out. You're not at OTAs. We better put out a video showing that you're working out. So I did get a chuckle out of that, considering all of the discussion we had about Jeffrey Simmons over the week, over last week.
Can I just ask a question? Because this is before we try to get into the mind of Jeffrey Simmons and why and all this, we try to read minds, which that's kind of I feel like that's the summer job. When we talk to Titans, we just try to read people's minds. What does this post mean, or what does this quote mean? But you mentioned the ropes. When was the first time you saw somebody do the rope thing? Because I can tell you, I saw that. I don't know what workout facility it was. It could have been a YMCA. Could have been a training room. I don't remember exactly. But I saw somebody doing that. Might have been at Vanderbilt's. Might have been when I was in college. I saw somebody doing that. I was like, huh, what's that guy doing? That looks pretty easy. Grab those ropes one time and try to do it for about 30 to 60 seconds. That is a brutal workout.
I think it's called the battle rope workout. I think
yes,
that's what it's
battle
called.
Rope. I'm sorry. I'm sorry not to get the lingo. But that is.
I just had to look it up.
Easy.
So.
It is not. It is not.
But that seems to be the exercise du jour. Whenever you watch one of those social media videos of somebody exercising, they got to be doing the rope thing. I'm like, huh, that's cool, I guess. But
all right.
But Jeffrey Simmons, what texter says, Robert says, how do we know those aren't old clips of him working out? LOL.
They're not old clips.
Hey, pull out the workout clips from last year. I'm on the beach.
Oh, man. I don't think they're workout clips.
No, I know.
Listen, again, I don't think, at least I can only, be responsible for the things that I say or think. I never thought that Jeffrey wasn't working out. And I understand that, today's players, they want to put out social media posts and show the fans what they're doing. But it's ironic that it comes out right after, he doesn't show up. And I'm not saying, listen, I'm not getting on him like that. Y'all know why I think he should have shown up, because they are 9-32 in the last 2.5 seasons. That's why he should have showed up. Should have been at camp on the first day. But it's just ironic that comes out after, there's questions, why Jeffrey isn't there and what that means about his leadership and everything else. So he's showing everybody that he's working, and rightfully so. I get it. But I'm not going, this doesn't sway me one way or the other. It's not like I thought Jeffrey wasn't working out, then he's put out this video and all of a sudden I think he's working out now. Now I'm happy and yay, it doesn't matter if Jeffrey wasn't there. No, it's the same thing. I knew he was working out. But I still want him here. Why? Again, because nobody deserves a pass when you're 9-32 over the last 2.5 seasons.
So we were talking last week about the Titans defense and how rookie quarterbacks benefit greatly from having a great defense. And then I saw this statistic that was retweeted into my timeline from John Glennon from Clevta, which is a sports analytics service of some kind. And it was
did the letters stand for something, or is that like somebody's aunt's name or something?
Aunt Clefta.
Aunt Clefta?
I am not sure. But Clefta listed the percentage of snaps each defense faced versus backup quarterbacks in the 2024 regular season.
Ooh.
The Tennessee Titans, percentage of snaps versus backup quarterbacks, 33%.
Gosh.
Only 2 teams in the NFL had a larger share of snaps against backup quarterbacks: the Washington Commanders and the Cincinnati Bengals at 34% each. And as Glennon pointed out, among the backups that the Titans faced, Malik Willis, Snoop Huntley, Joe Flacco, Mac Jones twice, and Davis Mills, and the Titans went 1-5 in those 6 games.
That was one of the more disappointing parts of the beginning of the season because they had some opportunities to maybe build a little confidence and take advantage of that. And the Malik Willis game is the number one example, of course. But man, that should tell you how far this roster has to go before they're where they want to be.
So that puts the scoring defense into even, I guess, worse context, right? They faced backup quarterbacks on a third of all snaps, all defensive snaps. They went 1-5 in those games, according to John Glennon, and we saw where they finished the season. And Klefta, thank you.
This is and now Klefta is a new one I've never heard of, right? So let's now put it with the ones that we go Pro Football Focus and ESPN Stats and Info. And
yes, by the way,
shots and stuff. So I've always wondered with a stat like that, right? How many, when you're looking at an overall rating of a defense, have that in there, right? You've got to put the numbers in the computer. How do you do it? I'm not smart enough to know. You got these mathematicians that are always trying to tweak stuff and make their numbers more accurate. But when you have one big number that says, here's our defensive efficiency ranking, it's 21st or it's 19th, is something like that in there? I've always been curious. That's hard, right? Because like that's pretty extensive. If that computer system, that number cruncher knows to factor in the backup quarterback.
By the way, the LA Rams faced a backup quarterback on 1% of their snaps.
Oh, wow.
10 snaps all year for the LA Rams against a backup quarterback. 10.
That's insane.
And the Titans, 33%. 33% on the other end of the spectrum.
Has anybody ever been perfect? A perfect record without ever facing the backup quarterback?
The Rams came pretty darn close last season.
That is pretty close. That's a one-hitter with 2 outs in the 9th inning. Who was the guy that had the 10 snaps?
It was
the Rams defense.
I can tell you.
Defense had to be going, we got the backup in here, guys. The backup's in.
I can tell you precisely because Klefta told me the Rams only faced 10 snaps all year versus a backup, and that was Aiden O'Connell before he got hurt and left week 7. So I guess against the Raiders. So
and even he started quite a few of the games, actually.
Yes, Mike in Lebanon said the Titans have a long history of making backups and rookie quarterbacks look good. One texter says, if I can get this text to load, it's slow to load. But the crux of the text was that nobody is questioning. Here it is. No one questions Simmons' work ethic, and we know he'll be ready to play, but he's the supposed leader of the team, and he's not there. Just a bad luck. And Dustin in Hopkinsville, he's a little less diplomatic. He says, go on and shove that video somewhere, Big Jeff. It's not you on the field or workout we're concerned about. It's not showing up with and for the team.
Again, I know why he did it. And now people are looking at it as, we just want you to be here. We don't care what you're doing, outside the football building, because I don't think anyone ever questioned whether Jeffrey was working or not. They see the same things that I see or y'all see, that a team that hasn't been good, and they see a guy that has been, portrayed as a leader on this team. And again, I know Jeffrey has leadership qualities. They're trying to find a leader. And that's what the people see. They see a guy that has leadership qualities, want to be a leader, but isn't here on the first day. And then come to find out everybody was there except him. The optics of that looks totally wrong. And I think sometimes we give guys more credit than what we should about being aware of certain things. I don't know if Jeffrey Simmons is aware, or he was aware that not showing up would have people question whether, his leadership, or is he a leader on his team? I don't think he really thought about it, or he really understood the temperature of what's going on. And that in itself isn't good when you're a leader. You got to know what's going on around you. You got to know the optics of things.
So what was it, a couple of years ago? I guess it would have been after the Bengals loss in the playoffs. Ryan Tannehill just so happened, someone posted him with was it a Celsius ad or something? He was on the boat when he wasn't at OTAs, and people were like, how dare he be on a boat when he's not supposed, after he choked away the Bengals game, this, that, and the other thing. I'm wondering if this, to me, and I don't know Jeffrey Simmons, but sort of piggybacking off of Derek here, to me, that felt like he is aware of what's being said. So let's post a video of him exercising just so that people know that while I'm not here, I'm working out. I don't think it, I think it was calculated. I don't think it was a coincidence.
Yeah. And again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with it. I'm not saying he's doing wrong, because he's not. But again, you gotta know the surroundings. You gotta know the temperature. You gotta know how it looks, how the optics look. When everyone is there, they said it would have been a perfect attendance. And you may have ran this through Callahan. I get it. And Callahan can't force you to come. But the optics of it looks totally bad when they say everyone was there. Not everyone was outside. Because what did I say? I said, if he was there, then I reserve to pull back, my criticism of him. But everyone was there except Jeffrey Simmons.
Well, the question I have for the both of you quickly is, I know that Brian Callahan can't force,
or would have been a perfect attendance.
Right.
I know everybody wasn't there, but a perfect attendance considering.
Brian Callahan, of course, can't force Jeffrey Simmons to be there because OTAs are, everybody, voluntary.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that Brian Callahan can't compel Jeffrey Simmons to be there, but I'm wondering if he could have had a conversation and said, look, Jeff, I know that you don't have to be here. I know that you have your own workout set up. I do think, however, it would be important for you to be here. I'm not going to tell you that you have to be here because I can't. But wink, wink, nudge, nudge. It would be great if you showed up, at least for the part where the media was here.
Yet he has to, I think. And again, that's why I said be in the building. If you're in the building, we got another conversation. We're going to talk about something different. I'm going to change my answer, and we're going to talk about something different. But when you're not even in the building, people can't even give you an excuse. People can't even say, well, you know what? Jeff was here, but he was inside working, just stretching, or in the weight room with the weight coach, but he's here with the guys. He was in the meeting rooms. He's good. That lands better than you wasn't here, period. You see what I'm saying? So, to me, it was just, again, it's not a bad guy, didn't do anything wrong. But when you are in the position that you are as an organization, you're searching for guys that are willing to sacrifice. And I can't tell you to come, but when we're sitting down and we had that conversation, like, okay, listen, these are our days, Jeff. I know it's not voluntary. You can't say, well, coach, I ain't going to be there on the first day. At least said, well, coach, I'll make sure I'm there on the first day. I'll make sure I'm there. But then I do have some things I need to do, or I can come, every so many days. But the first day, you got to be there.
And I wonder, too, if it's just easier. Maybe it's just a load off his mind to not be sitting there going, oh, boy, they're going to ask me a bunch of questions, and they're going to try to pinpoint me. And I'm tired of answering all these questions about leadership and all that stuff. And it's hard, right? I can see that. And so maybe maybe somebody says, well, let's just show people what you're doing here. You don't have to answer any questions. We'll let the pictures speak for themselves. I can see that angle, but it doesn't have the impact with the media, for sure, that you're looking for, right? But I can kind of get a little bit of, man, I just don't want to sit there. I know these press conferences. Now, you can go to the people and say, your media relations people, and say, you know what? I don't want to talk. They're going to be all over me. I just don't want to do it right now. I want to be here. I want to work on my game, and let's talk again in training camp or something like that. But I just get the feeling he doesn't want to be out in front answering a lot of questions right now. That's the vibe I'm getting, but you tell me if you disagree.
Well, I would hope that, considering he is one of the highest paid players on the team, if not the highest paid player on the team, considered by many to be the best player on the team, I would hope that he would be okay answering tough questions. We did have a couple of texters last week suggest that he's doing this on purpose because he likes poking the media. I can't imagine that's the case. But part of being up front as a member of a team is fielding tough questions. So
yeah,
he could have avoided it by showing up, because the first time he does show up, as soon as something is mandatory, who is the first player that every reporter and camera and microphone is going to be looking for? Jeffrey Simmons. So he's making it a bigger story by not being there. 615-737-1025. We will wrap up the show coming up next. I can't imagine Jared Stillman will be doing any gloating after what happened in the Nashville Regional this past weekend, but we'll find out together. 615-737-1025. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan. 1025-1063. The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Stillman and Company coming up next. And rumor has it that the show open is going to be replaced by the Louisville fight song. Do I understand that correctly? We'll find out at 2 o'clock. Jared Stillman with us. So, Jared, last week you said that you were wrong about Tim Corbin. You heaped praise upon Tim Corbin, and deservedly so. Does the outcome of the Nashville Regional change your mind in any way?
I just want you guys to hear this. This is how I feel. That's not even the fight song. It's just what a great weekend for Louisville baseball. This weekend, the Vanderbilt Regional Champions. I'd like to everyone says I'm too negative. I'd like to be positive today. Can I be positive today, gentlemen?
This is
Go ahead.
This would be like what the Colts raised a 2014 AFC finalist banner. A Nashville Regional Champion banner has that same vibe, I think. I think you have higher expectations than that.
I mean, do I have higher expectations? I did not have higher expectations than Louisville coming in here and being the team that survived. It goes 3-0 against the Vandy Boys. And with the way Vanderbilt had been playing baseball, I'm as shocked as anybody about what happened this past weekend. I was shocked by what happened in the Wright State game, but when Vanderbilt survived, and I think if Vanderbilt were still playing, there'd be a lot more talk about the end of that Wright State game. And I don't know how in the world they overturned that call, and then they replayed it. I couldn't even see the ball on the replay. But outside of that 8th inning against Wright State, I mean, they got outplayed by Wright State in 2 games over, I believe, 16 out of the 18 innings. They were significantly outplayed by Wright State. I did not see that coming. Louisville, I kept telling all my friends, I was at the game on Saturday, and I kept saying to everyone, like, hey, and I say we because I was with Louisville people and I'm a Louisville person and I was in the crowd. And I said, hey, if we go in there and make a bunch of mistakes, Vanderbilt is going to pounce on them like a boa constrictor. And every mistake you make, the way this team had been playing, in the SEC tournament, they bludgeoned Tennessee off of their mistakes. I said, if you make mistakes, you're going to lose. And Louisville made almost every mistake to allow Vanderbilt to score. Vandy didn't have an extra base hit. If Louisville doesn't have a pass ball, if Louisville doesn't, throw to the wrong base, if Louisville doesn't, the third baseman got greedy and he tried for the tag, missed, decided to throw to first. I was sitting behind the first base dugout. I'm like, no, keep it. And he throws it over the first baseman's head. If Louisville doesn't make those 3 mistakes, Vandy doesn't score a run. And so I'm trying to figure out how this happened to the Vanderbilt team that I have been watching for the last month, but I am as shocked and stunned as anybody else.
Yeah, baseball can be cruel like that, where you can look that. I think more so than other sports. I think all sports have it, but I think basketball probably the least. Football probably the second least. I would say hockey and baseball are more prone to having examples we can think of where a team is on such a roll and then suddenly it just seems like the magic runs out. But you're right. I think the second game, Jared, was the key game. The second game, if Vanderbilt finds a way to do what they had been doing for weeks, which is grind out, find a way to win, be opportunistic. Like, I really thought the door was open when that third baseman for Louisville was struggling and set the table, second and third, no outs. I was like, this is the moment. Vanderbilt's got the pitching to shut him down, and they didn't do it. The second, third, no outs, they don't score. And that had not happened to them in a while, right? They had been pulling out these games. And I think from there, the weight hit a little more.
I said I was sitting next to my buddy's 8-year-old, who's a huge diehard U of L fan. And I said to him, early in the game, RJ Austin came up to bat. And I said, this is the guy who we do not want to see in a big moment in this game. Because I am familiar with what RJ Austin has done, especially in the postseason at Vanderbilt, and he was a non-factor this weekend. He was a non-factor in that moment you brought up, Willie. He has the bases loaded down 5-1 in the Wright State game. I thought that when they popped out on the 3-0 pitch, I thought Vanderbilt was done. Credit to them that they didn't give up till the end. And I think the other thing to highlight is I think Tim Corbin had a bad weekend. And it's okay to say somebody who's a really good coach has a bad weekend. I thought he had a bad weekend from the standpoint of his guys, they weren't playing relaxed. He would be the first to admit that. I thought he had a bad weekend with his pitching decision on Saturday night to bring in Fennell in the to try to win the second game. I felt like at that point, with Louisville having the lead, he probably needed to hold him back because regardless, you're going to be playing on Saturday anyway. So I thought that was a massive mistake that Tim Corbin made. And then I also thought that he didn't look very classy in the press conference on Saturday night, and I was a little disappointed by that. So I have to say, again, RJ Austin had a tough series. He wasn't the only one, at the plate that had a tough regional, but I thought Tim Corbin had a tough weekend. For a guy who is a fantastic coach, I thought he had a tough weekend.
Jared, I think
all that is fair. This is what baseball is, right? It's especially the team that loses in the postseason. Things I can go back to, name a postseason in the 80s that I was watching as a kid. I can name you decisions that have been questioned for 40 years since, right? That's part of why we love baseball. The Fennell decision was gutsy. They had been doing that. They had been piggybacking Connor Fennell, it was probably their most effective pitcher. He's their hottest pitcher. They had been piggybacking him off of Bowker, the guy that started against Louisville, for a couple of weeks, and it was really effective, especially against Tennessee and Kentucky the 2 weeks before that. So, but with them down a run, these are the tough decisions in a regional. If I win this game, I'm sitting pretty. I only need one more win. But if you lose, you're playing you're sending a bullet out there that it's hard. You got to then win 3 more games. These are the really, really tricky decisions you got to make, and it backfired on them. And I'll say one more thing before I turn it to you, Adam. With the I think it was second and third, nobody out. The first guy up there, they're down 3-2. After Louisville has opened the door, the crowd's going, the third baseman is kind of reeling a little bit. The momentum is on Vanderbilt's side. Colin Barzy hits a rocket.
Yeah.
Right at the third baseman. If that's 5 feet either way, which is Vanderbilt, those kind of hits had been falling for them for weeks, right? Every time they needed the hit, they got it. He hits it as hard as you can hit a ball, but it's right at the third baseman. They get an out, and they wiggle out of the inning as a result. These are just the random thing, the randomness, the bounces, the balls finding holes, the game of inches. That is baseball in a nutshell.
Well, it's funny you say that because I was talking to Dan McDonnell about this either yesterday or Saturday night, and the Louisville coach. And I said to him, I go, what's so funny is the margins in these things are so small. And I think we've all now as a city, whether you're a UT fan or a Vandy fan, I think we've been through it enough that where everybody really knows how small the margins are. In 2014, Vandy won the national title. They played Louisville in the first game of the College World Series. And there was an at-bat where the 9th place hitter, questionable, 3-2 pitch, they called ball 4, and Dansby Swanson laces a bases clearing double on the next pitch. And it's like, if you get that call, how much does that not only change the game, but change the outlook for everything? And I think there was some of that for Vanderbilt in the Louisville game, a bounce here, a bounce there. But again, I felt like it wasn't like, in my opinion, Louisville hung on because Vandy put it to them. I thought the only reason that Vandy was in the game was because of the mistakes Louisville had made and that offensive ineptitude all weekend long. I mean, that's the story of the weekend, whether Tim Corbin wants to address it or not. And I keep trying to figure out how the team that was just, they hit with power in the SEC. They were huge in the clutch in the SEC. They could hit, they could move guys over, they could bunt, they could run the bases. They were they were a sexy baseball team to watch. How that happened and deteriorated the way it did over that regional, I still don't understand. And it's like Joe's column in The Athletic pointed out, it's not like Wright State was throwing future major leaguers, at least we don't think, future major leaguers up there. These are guys with ERAs in the 5s and the 8s.
Jared, Tennessee has an opportunity to advance out of the Knoxville Regional today against Wake Forest. If the Vols win, does the pendulum swing back toward the Vols in any way, considering what Vandy did against Tennessee this season?
I don't think it swings back if Tennessee wins, although Tennessee fans will claim that it does. I think it swings back to Tennessee if they get back to Omaha. If they go to Omaha, then the fact that Vandy won the SEC, the fact that Vandy spanked them in the SEC tournament, and the fact that Vanderbilt took 3 out of 4 against them this year is kind of a moot point. So if I'm Vanderbilt, I'm cheering hard for Wake Forest today. If I'm a Vandy fan that cares about the rivalry on Twitter. And if I am a Tennessee fan, and I'm just going to use Chad Withrow as the example here for all of us. If I'm
Did we lose Jared?
I think we may have lost.
I think
Jared.
so.
We lost Jared.
I thought I was lost for a second. I was like, hey, they cut me off early.
I'm sure a lot of fans right now are like, yeah. No, we love Jared, of course. And Jared will be back on, hopefully, in a few minutes on Stillman and Company. I figured he would want to gloat a little bit about Louisville emerging out of the Nashville. Hello, Jared. You're back.
Yes.
You're back.
I just cut out for a second.
Yes. If you said anything profound, we did not hear it.
I just took a crack at Chad Withrow. That was it.
And now we'll never know exactly.
He must have sabotaged you somehow.
Yes, he must have known you were about to. But Stillman and Company, of course, is coming up next. Not the Volunteers. Vanderbilt making the wrong type of history. The first #1 overall seed to not even make its regional final in the current tournament format. Jerry will pick up the conversation coming up next.
Be love on your people. Have a safe, blessed, wonderful Monday. Peace.